We had planned all to go like out and party. I got pretty drunk and was just really angry. I was yelling a bunch of stuff, cussing at people, and I was just done. I didn't want to be alive in that moment anymore. Texted one of my friends and was just like, God's abandoned me, and none of my friends like love me, they're all fake. I'm gonna drown myself. The waves are kind of crashing on me, and I'm stumbling down in the ocean and was just underwater. My friend Shane had gotten in contact with my other friend, and they sent him where I was at the beach, like what specific lifeguard tower I was at, and he ended up coming down into the water. And then I feel these hands like reach behind me and drag me out. I'm from Portland, Oregon, originally. I grew up there. It's a very secular city, and many people are de-churched, not necessarily wanting to have anything to do with any sort of religion or Christianity or Jesus, especially. And a lot of my friends were atheists, in elementary school. And I just felt so saddened for my friend. My parents both love the Lord, and they've just raised us in a family that just loves Jesus. I was in private school from 7th grade through freshman year of high school. The summer before going into my sophomore year of high school, the Lord started putting it really heavy on my heart and my family's heart to transfer to our local public school. I was in this new school, I didn't know anyone, and on my first day of school, I was just like, Lord, please let me meet just one believer. There was this girl that was there, went over to her and was like, hey, how are you? And she was like, hey, I'm doing great. Just so you know, we're about to start praying for our school. And from that, I met the dude that was leading the prayer, and his name was Ben. And so it was basically the 5 believers every Tuesday. We'd meet together for lunch and just start praying for the school, reading the Word together, checking up on one another, caring for each other. And then over that next summer, me and Ben just started just really seeking the Lord and praying, Lord, what can we do to see our friends come to know Jesus? How can we lead them to you? And we ended up starting a club, a Christian club at our school, and we called it Team Jesus. And the first week, it was just the five believers in the school. Next week there was 10, and literally by the end of the first month, there was 60 to 70 students. I ended up graduating high school and kind of just didn't have as much community anymore starting in college. And, one of my friends hit me up and was like, hey, bro, there's some parties this weekend that are happening. I don't know if you'd want to come. It was my first time ever getting drunk. And from that point, basically, over the next few months, it was basically every single weekend, going out, partying, drinking, smoking weed. I'd end up doing that Saturday night, and then Sunday night I'd be back at church, kind of, just faking it. A lot of the people that I was surrounded by were either really serving the Lord and loving Him and seeking Him, and then the other half of that was people were kind of living this double life of, trying to figure it out, saying they love the Lord, but, kind of partying and drinking on the weekends. COVID hits, in spring break of 2020, and had to get sent home. So I had to go back to Portland, and really did not want to be back in Portland. I was just in a terrible spot and really treated my family poorly, treated my brothers and my parents poorly. It's kind of hard to remember what was fully going through my mind and my head during that time. And I was just really isolated, and I just felt really clouded, and I wasn't living out my faith. Proverbs 18:1, it says, he who isolates himself seeks his own desire and breaks out against all sound judgment. And that was just very true for myself, where I just isolated myself. I was seeking my own desires, and it was only in my mind. And August 2020, going back to school, and we had planned all to go out and party and go to the beach and just have a little party. I got pretty drunk and was just really angry, and just was yelling a bunch of stuff, cussing at people, and it was 10 at night or something, or midnight or something, I don't even know. And was just sitting there, and I was just done. I didn't want to be alive in that moment anymore. And so texted one of my friends from back home and was just like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm God's abandoned me. None of my friends love me, they're all fake. And I'm gonna drown myself. I'm in the water and I'm you know, the waves are kind of crashing on me, and you know, I'm stumbling down in the ocean and we're just underwater. My friend Shane had gotten in contact with my other friend, and they sent him where I was at the beach, like what specific lifeguard tower I was at, and he ended up coming down into the water, and then I feel these hands like reach behind me and drag me out. Really just started sharing the gospel with me and just speaking the truth, you know, which like I had heard before growing up and had like lived out actively, and I really just felt it like deep in my soul that the Lord was just saying like, DJ, stop running from me. I've been chasing after you this whole time. In that moment, I realized like my whole life, like I'd always just thought that like, you know, like I would go so far, and then if I did good enough, I could turn around and then come back to Jesus, you know, but in reality, I was running, and he was just behind me, and all I had to do was turn to him, and he went with me through all these hardships in my life to take me through it. And so Shane himself started really pouring into me and like walk with me and teach me what he had been learning in the Word. And you know, this church started that was meeting in homes called Zeal. And so he brings me into Zeal, and it was so much more than just seeing each other once a week and checking in like briefly, but it was like all the time we were together. You know, as I was at Zeal and getting to know Maya, my now wife, you know, we dated for a year and ended up getting married. Beforehand, like, you know, I was getting involved in like, you know, just partying and drinking and smoking and all that kind of stuff. And really all it took was just like people to love me and point me to Jesus and to abide in his word. Like, this is so cool to see, like what would it look like for us to start something like this on our own college campus. If there was people that were pouring into us then and walking with us then, like none of that stuff probably would have happened. We ended up starting a church at Vanguard, and it was called Rise. You know, like the very first little gathering we all had together in this small dorm. We had like 50 students packed in, and like over 75% of them were freshmen. I feel like people our age are just more open to Jesus than ever. Everyone's longing for love, and everyone's longing for connection and community, and to have purpose in their life. And as people learn that like Jesus has actually, you know, done that for us and given that to us, and like actually seeing the sacrifice he's made for us, like people like want to follow him, because he's what they've been searching for the whole time. They just don't realize it. My desire from sharing my story is just for people to see Jesus' hand. Like this is Jesus' story that he's written, and I genuinely believe that we will see Jesus come back in our lifetime one day. My name is DJ Hernandez, and I am second.